Hey guys, it's me again, Orkslayer. What if? Where we last left off? Let's see, checking. Where we last left off on what if Deku was a lamenter? We just got not done with the sports festival. We're pretty close to it. It's just Izumi's and Izuku's fight down. Their fight is, since it's all being broadcasted, you can actually see most of the other groups around, like the Lamenters, even Hizashi has been able to actually see it. Their mother has seen it along with Mitsuki. Not Mitsuki, Mitsuki, Bakugo's mom. Fulcrum and Shigaraki have also seen it. Fulcrum's using it, wondering, I would say, how they have recovered from the Black Rage, because according to, some of the Chaos Marines and such, they didn't know some of the sons of, let's say just sons of the Angel, could ever come out of it. That's, from what they heard, they always are used in death companies, which means they essentially are sent on suicide missions and then they are killed. Because they typically can't be corralled back into, they can't be coerced back. The only one who has ever done this was trapped under a building that literally fell on top of him, and he clawed his way out, after, I think it was 10 days? 3 to 10 days is how long it took him to come down from the legendary Black Rage. And afterwards, he's apparently a very powerful psyker. So, I guess how any of that works. But I digress. As we get down to Izumi and Izuku's fight, Izuku is waiting away as he focuses, as he's honing this ability. Because in the last one, from what I remember, he has some bits of Sanguinius's foresight ability, which I explained it before if I hadn't. What is the fact that he can see glimpses of the future. At the moment, it's quite sparse. It happens every now and then of what the person might do. It was one of Sanguinius's, many abilities. And Izuku so far has, 2 of them. He has his ability to fly, and he has now the foresight ability. Izuku's skills and relative leadership charismatic nature may not all essentially be the same as Sanguinius's. Okay. Oh, sorry about that. It will be told in time. So, as we digress, both of them are getting ready for their fights. They sort of secluded themselves from anyone around them. Izumi's off in her own personal locker, sort of meditating and honing the abilities that she sort of developed. And then you have Izuku, or Deku, who is honing in this moment to sort of try to see if it can channel those foresight abilities. As they are actually called to the arena, both of them are wondering the same thing. Can I actually beat them? Because Izumi, with all her psychic might, is still wary of Deku's ability to... Because she knows if she gets physically in a fight with him, she's gonna lose, hands down. She can't fight him there. Her entire abilities come from her psychic might. Now, she may be able to boost herself somewhat with psychic powers, as well as use many other abilities to sort of hamper him down, but she knows it's still going to be a pretty big fight. She's going to have to channel everything she has into focusing and trying to just get him out of the ring. Whereas, I'll say this, they have somewhat specified that since Izuku can fly, he has to somewhat stay around the arena, he's given a little bit of leeway, but not a lot. For instance, like, if he just flew outside bounds for the people, he would have to get within like 20 to 30 second period if he was flying. As soon as he touches the ground, it's over. Now, Izumi's gonna do her best to actually fight this. So, I'll keep... Damn, don't know why I'm yelling. But I'm gonna cut to it. As they're both staring each other down, Izumi starts getting a couple of whispers here and there about using her anger to channel her fury. As she's had a couple of these instances where she's heard like whispering to her. It ain't violent or anything, it's just like furious. Like it's hot like fire. But also the voice is rather soothing in a way. It's to her it doesn't make any sense. But she feels herself getting amped up by this. She can feel a sort of passion inside her chest. Now as we go over to Deku, he's seeing flashes of bits. Like first he sees Izumi using a bunch of fire abilities to try and quickly burn him, or at least trying to hamper his ability to fly. But then he also sees her using ice magic, wind magic. He sees all sorts of possibilities. Then he sees another where she somewhat engulfs in a bit of fire, and she sort of gains that look in her eyes that she had back in the USJ. He has to hone down which of these is going to happen. So he's watching her like a hawk, trying to ensure he doesn't get, blasted apart. But again, I digress. We run as Midnight's like, "Are you ready?" Izuku gives a nod, and Izumi, as she's like, "Are you ready, Izumi?" It's like, He's like, "All right, begin!" As she snaps her whip. Deku comes rushing in, as he knows he can't let Izumi get too long, otherwise she will be able to just wring him out. Eventually, it's gonna be a hard-fought battle. Either way, Deku knows he has to get close to her, though. So as he starts rushing at her, not even using his ability to fly, he doesn't want to use that too much. Because in the air, he will have a harder time, especially if she uses wind magic in conjunction with her fire abilities. To keep on saying magic and abilities, they're pretty much the same thing, it's just space magic, essentially. So, but anyways, I digress. Izumi's essentially trying to... as she's listening to this voice in the back of her head, but she's trying to ignore it for most bit of it. Izumi is unnerved by it. It's very creepy to her. She doesn't know exactly what to do. As Izumi's trying to keep the voice out of her head, it slowly but surely is causing her to lose her effectiveness in the fight, where at points it gets louder and louder, then quiets down after she forces it back. It's sort of like an internal struggle going on inside her head, and Deku actually takes notice of this. He's like, "Are you okay, Izumi?" As he takes a moment to just wait, as Izumi's like clutching at the left side of her head, she's like, "God, shut up, god damn." As she's just rubbing her head, as Deku takes a moment to stop, he's like, she overtaxing herself? Even, not Momo, I was about to say Momo, but even Inko was trying to get curious about this, on why Izumi's like staggering a bit. Because in this like moments where she's fighting against, or trying to push back whatever is like talking to her inside her head, she has moments where she staggers, trips, and slips up. Inko doesn't understand it, neither does Deku. What they do understand, though, is that she's struggling a bit. So as Deku sees that she's pretty close to the edge, he actually rushes forward and just goes to push her out, trying to get her out of there so that way she can go rest for a while. But as that's happening, Izumi, as she loses a little bit of control with that thing inside her, with whatever's speaking to her, trying to claim a space inside her head, as she would probably put it, she blasts with a bit of energy as her hair goes completely on fire. And that and for a moment, Deku can feel an intense amount of rage that just bellows off her, as he is sent staggering backwards from this explosion that essentially happens, as she regains control of herself and she falls unconscious. In that split second, Deku saw... Sorry about that if there was a bit of staggering. But Deku saw her flash. Her hair became like that of fire. Her eyes became like what would be essentially be made looking into the sun. And her clothes seemed to take on a different shape, looking more like armor. It was really unnatural to him, that he doesn't understand it. But then afterwards of that little thing she did, she fell unconscious. Sorry about that. As Midnight declares Deku the winner, as the nursery bots are, the nurse bots are called out to take Izumi back to Recovery Girl's office, so that way she can have some time to rest and recover. Deku's extremely worried about this, so he calls his mom after he gets out of the stage, and their mom is already on her way. She doesn't know what it was, but she knows it's something that needs to be taken a look at, and she knows that Recovery Girl, despite Recovery Girl's best efforts, will not understand what this is, because this, as it is obvious, is something to do with the warp. And Inko knows you don't mess around with the warp. Even though she loves her daughter, she cannot let like a demon or something take possession of her daughter if that's the case that's happening. So she has a feeling it's not quite that. But I digress. I keep on forgetting that as soon as I press the volume button on my phone, it automatically cuts off the recording. Sorry about that. But as I digress and keep going, if I remember, the lamenters and all of them actually explained what had happened at the USJ, what was behind it. From my memory, they actually took Nezu and a lot of teachers aside to explain the entire happenings of what went down in the USJ. Because there was nothing that they could do to really hide from it, and they couldn't really mind wipe everybody. Nor did Deku really want to. As when Inko shows up, Recovery Girl's like, I had a feeling you'd be arriving. So, can you tell me what exactly is going on? As Inko's like, I do not know. But I will tell you in a minute. Would you give me some time to examine? She's like, of course, ma'am. As Recovery Girl leaves, as Deku shows up, he's allowed in, so that way he could see what's happening. As Sato is right behind Deku, and Sato's also let in, I'll say, since Izumi and Sato are very close together. As they stood there waiting, her mother, Inko, sort of not ruminating, but using her psychic powers to sort of poke and jab at Izumi's. As she can feel a foreign power in there, but she can't quite tell what it is. She says it feels extremely familiar, like she's been around it before. But as she's poking and prodding, something lashes back out at her as it's a burning hot fury that she's only felt once before while in the presence of something. It's sort of like a weapon, or a fragment, you could say, of a god. One of their gods, to be more specific, as she feels the presence of Cain. Now, for a little info dump, Cain was essentially the Eldar's god of war. He was one of their most powerful gods, if not the most powerful, from what I can remember, or from what I know. He essentially would go toe to toe with gods just for fun, and actually win. Now, what had happened is that when the Eldar eventually, sorry about that, I received a message. But anyways, I keep on getting interrupted. The Cain is the Eldar's god of war, yada yada yada. But when the Eldar, essentially murder-fucked, as the term is coined, Slaanesh into existence, essentially what happened is Slaanesh took almost all the Eldar souls devoured all their gods, and then it came down to Cain. Cain being the second to last god of the Eldar, but was massively weakened due to the fact that most of his worshippers were now dead. Now, here's the thing. What had happened is that he was actually able to fight Slaanesh, and was actually, if I remember, going to win against her, even while extremely depleted of strength and fighting a freshly born Slaanesh, which that's a massive thing to be able to do, even at your lowest. Now, what happened after that is that Khorne had pretty much essentially heard this happening, and essentially came along and just shattered Cain into thousands of shards. And then what happened is that Eldar would actually find these shards and actually use them as somewhat like a super weapon, you could say. Like, he would be something that they would bring out to try and win a battle. It's kind of a joke in the thing where Cain essentially is like that thing you bring out to show that, oh, they're so, like, a character is powerful by having them defeat one. Like, Fulgrim did, I believe Abaddon has done. There's been a lot of characters to essentially defeat a shard of Cain. It's not a very, let's say, not a very, quote-unquote, impressive feat to do, but it is, in normal human terms, let's say, fantastic. I want to sort of give a bit more respect to it. So in a sense, it's essentially going to act like a Super Saiyan mode for Izumi. Putting her on par with Midoriya. Oh, well, I'll say it's putting her on par with, in terms of physical strength, this is a hard place to put her, but it puts her on par with Izuku. It boosts her psychic power too, but she becomes somewhat battle-crazed, typically forgetting to use a lot of her warp abilities, her psychic abilities. So she ends up going, like, more completely berserk into a DPS stage. Or into complete, DPS, I would say, is the best term to use it. As Inko feels that backlash from looking into the spine, she covers her head as she feels the rage trying to infect her, but she holds it back, not allowing it to take root, as you would say. So she has to, like, somewhat be caught by Deku, as a Shardicane is relatively powerful, but Inko would be able to typically put up a thing to protect herself from something like this, but since she was more open, not expecting it to really come about at her. She had a little bit, but it wasn't the right. She was expecting something a lot weaker than the shard, essentially. As it hits her, she actually goes back and is caught. As Inko actually felt it, and now she could tell what it was, she goes to explain to Izuku and Sando what I had just explained to you. Shards of Cane, what happened to him, yada, yada, yada. As Recovery Girl was called back in, they explained the situation to her. And Recovery Girl was like, so how do we deal with this situation? Well, I'm not quite sure. Typically, when a Shard of Cane is used, it typically manifests into a giant aspect of war. But the fact that it's more or less not merged, but somewhat become a part of Izumi in a way I can't fully comprehend, she essentially says she doesn't know. She hasn't dealt with something like this. She doesn't know the procedure. So they'll just have to wait for her to wake up and ask what exactly went on inside Izumi. They'll just essentially have to wait for Izumi to wake up. Now I'm gonna flash over to Shigaraki and them, because this will be a different thing. As All for One, and Fulcrum are sort of discussing, as Fulcrum is actually performing a ritual right now, trying to converse with the Chaos Gods. It is a very, very bad signal, to say the least. He can't even barely sort of send whispers their way. But that's it. That's all he can do. As he has Shigaraki that walks in, it's like, Fulcrum. It's like, Yes, Shigaraki. He's like, Master wishes to speak with you. He's like, yes. As he picks up his staff after canceling out the ritual, is like, so, my student, what have you ruminated upon anything we have talked about? He's like, yeah. He's like, Are you angry at me, Shigaraki? As he looks Shigaraki dead in his eyes. Shigaraki looks at him and just sort of snarls. It's just like, What's the problem? As he's just like, he talks to the master. Just messing with him. He's become different. As he's referring to the fact that All for One, even though he typically would hold a lot more, not self-respect, but hold himself to a higher superiority complex, essentially, is what he has. But Shigaraki's scene, it has gotten much worse. As with the rituals that have been performed for All for One, that he has performed himself, during points where the warp can be more easily grasped, you could say, All for One has performed rituals and has actually formed a few pacts with some demons. Or daemons, however you wish to say it. As in, you got Fulcrum, who's just like, yes. Are you saying such things because you have yet to form a couple of packs of your own? If you wish, I could quite, as Shigaraki's like, no! As he goes to scratch at his neck, he's like, the sensei's mind is becoming poisoned. You act like you're gonna help us. I know, truly. As Shigaraki gets close to him, he's like, you're just gonna use us as pawns in your game. He's like, second I prove it, I'm turning you to ash. So Fulcrum's like, oh, Shigaraki. As Fulcrum uses his psychic might to throw Shigaraki against the wall and starts forcing him into it. As remember, guys, if you guys don't remember, Shigaraki is essentially getting close to, if not a full Space Marine at this point. It was hellish on Shigaraki, but he was able to survive it. He's just like, listen here, boy. I am older than you by centuries, and I will not be talked down by you. Do well to remember that, or I shall offer your skull to Corn, your mind to Zinj, your flesh to Nurgle, and whatever's left can be taken but by Slaanesh. Remember that. I'm your superior, and that's how it will always be. As he goes stomping away with Shigaraki finally released from the wall, he's just like, I'm gonna kill him. As Fulcrum opens doors like, Master Overhaul. Master All for One. How may I be of service to you? He's just like, I was curious as to how your communications go, Fulcrum. It's like, unfortunately, my lord, as he refers to him like in 40k terms, like my lord, master, stuff like that. It's like, my lord, it is not going well. The warp sensitivity since the USJ has somewhat been lacking. I fear it will take quite some time before we are able to enact anything on that sort of scale. She's like, I was so interested in meeting your gods, Fulcrum. He's like, as I know they will be excited to meet you, my lord. After all, a whole new world to conquer is something grand in their eyes. And surely being the most powerful upon this planet, I surely know you'd be able to take on any sort of manner of creature. Not any manner, but quite a few creatures of their own design. As I believe since All for One is comparable to All Might in a lot of things, I believe he is, because I believe All Might is higher than a custodian. With his strength and everything, I believe he may be even comparable to a Primarch at the very least. So I would say All for One is pretty similar. Now, reaction timing and like his flesh and all that, I don't know exactly how all that would go down, but I think it's pretty good. He has a pretty strong chance on taking quite a few characters if he has enough time, and has the same armor, gear, and all that sort of stuff afforded to him. I believe he would do well there. Not saying, but I think he will be very powerful, especially if he's able to gather the attention of the Chaos Gods to become some form of a Chaos Undivided. But I'll keep going. As he's like, oh, this is true. Though the companions, you could say, I've made as sort of shadowy figures appear over All for One, as he's actually made a deal with, I believe, let's see, 1, 2, I'd say 3 of the 4 Chaos Gods. Slaanesh, Zinj, and actually Nurgle. Now, some of you may ask, why not Khorne? Well, Khorne doesn't really have anything, a Demon of Khorne really hasn't had anything to offer All for One yet. He's pretty powerful as it is. Now, Zinch's demon has offered him knowledge and forbidden insight. While you got Nurgle's thing, who has offered to make him tougher, as well as maybe help him heal just a tiny bit from the wound he has suffered from All Might. And then Slaanesh's has offered him somewhat of a way to be more charismatic, intoxicating or exciting, as you could say. Things like that. As he's like, yes, your companions, my lord. He's like, yep. Now, you may leave me. They wish to, as he listens to, as one of the Zinch demon starts speaking into his ears, like, ah, yes, you are quite right. There was one thing I was wondering. Of course, my lord. What is that you require? He's like, where might I get a suit of armor similar to yours? As All For One leans forward, or anything that's better medical equipment. He runs his hand over the stuff they got here. Mine is quite insufficient. As Fulcrum's like, let me begin with the Dark Mechanicum. As you could say we gotta fade out to black. And I'm saying that's where we're gonna have to end it off at. I hope you guys enjoy this. Hope you guys continue to enjoy this. And yeah. Anyways, I hope you guys have a nice day, nice night, nice life.